Hello YouTube, long time no see. Sorry about my unexpected, unannounced 2-year hiatus, but I am back. I have several writing episodes in the can. There is one definitely coming out on Monday. So, good news! Hopefully you missed me and are not like, ugh, why is she making videos again? My cousin Joshua has started his own booktube and it is awesome. You can link to his channel here and to his January wrap-up, February TBR here. And I am specifically doing a January wrap-up, February TBR because of him. So hopefully you'll enjoy that, and if this is something you're interested in, I will continue vlogging about what I read throughout the year. I am currently participating in a reading challenge, where I read different types of books. For example, a book with more than 500 pages, a book with a color in a title, a book written more than 100 years ago. I won't be threshing out the entire challenge here, but if you would like to see it, I will link to my Tumblr page where I do the whole list, and my blog where I post a bit about what specifically I'm going to be reading. So if you're interested in that, check out the links in the underbar. For now, let's get started on what I read in January! I started the year off with a bit of Jules Verne. I did this specifically for a book that takes place in another country. I read 5 Weeks in a Balloon, and it was so much fun. To be honest, I read this book specifically because it's a classic and I want to read more intelligent books. And then I just was thoroughly entertained. It's so silly, the language is beautiful. There is an entire chapter on how to build a hot air balloon, which would be really interesting if I were an engineer and in any way intelligent. As it is, I kind of skimmed. But there are beautiful characters. The 3 main characters are just wonderful. And it's an adventure. There's attacks by cannibals and lions and, you know, crashing the hot air balloon, and it is so much fun. Next I read The Unicorn Treasury, compiled by Bruce Coville. To be honest, I didn't like it as much as A Glory of Unicorns, which is another anthology compiled by Bruce Coville, but I did enjoy it. It's just a collection of stories and poems about unicorns. There were some that really weren't good, some that were just okay, a bunch of excerpts, which frustrates me. I hate being dropped in the middle of a story and leaving before the ending and just being like, now I have to go find the whole novel. I find that obnoxious. But some of them were really great. There's one entitled The Princess, the Cat, and the Unicorn by Patricia C. Reed, and it was delightful. Just a really silly, kind of snarky fairy tale. Not sure I would necessarily recommend seeking out this one, but if you find it, there are definitely some good stories and poems in it. If you're interested in unicorn stories, you'll enjoy this one. Next, for a book turned into a movie, I read Howl's Moving Castle. I'm a little late on the Howl fandom train, but I am thoroughly on board because this book was glorious. Howl is so ridiculous. Sophie was super relatable, like, I feel like I could be Sophie, and Calcifer is the best thing that ever happened. I'm a huge Calcifer fangirl, like, I'll just sit over here and love him. Also, I discovered while reading it that there were 2 other books in the series, and now I own them. Next, for a book by an author you love that you haven't read before, I read Mike by P.G. Wodehouse. Wodehouse is my all-time favorite author, and I read in an essay that this was his favorite book he ever wrote. It's classic, idyllic Wodehouse style, very funny, lots of cricket. Lots of cricket. And I know nothing about cricket. And it's kind of similar to baseball, and so I kind of read it like it was baseball, but it isn't, and I also know nothing about baseball, so it didn't really help. But skimming over the cricket scenes, this book was just fun and light, and my copy is beautiful, obviously. See this cover? You're jealous. I know. Next, for a book a friend recommended, my cousin Joshua recommended The Magician's Elephant by Kate DiCamillo. Kate DiCamillo is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. I just love everything by her, and I adored this book. Like all of her books, it's kind of dark, it's kind of magical, it's beautiful, it makes you think about life. She just is a master storycrafter, and her language is just delicious. Cannot handle the beauty of her prose. Next, for a book based on a TV show, I read the Avatar: The Last Airbender graphic novels The Search. And can I just tell you, I feel better about life having read these books, because I now know what happened to Zuko's mother. And not knowing was not okay. I don't know how canonical these books are. I'm counting them as canon, and I am saying this is the true story, and you know what? I really enjoyed these. I was surprised by how good they were. Next, for a book you can finish in a day, I read The Door in the Wall by Marguerite de Angeli. I'm not sure it's something I would normally recommend, but it's about an invalid boy, and I struggle with illness myself, and so it really struck home. It's very powerful, very strong Christian motif. I really enjoyed it. It's maybe a little didactic. It didn't feel heavy-handed to me. It's just a very beautiful story set in the Middle Ages about a kid who is an invalid and kind of has to deal with that. Next, for a book from your childhood, I read Backyard Angel by Judy Delton. This is kind of a sad, weird little book. I don't know why it's always been one of my favorites, but I've owned it ever since I was really little and would read it again and again and again. Finally, the last book I read in January was a book with more than 500 pages. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I specifically read this book because Algernon from the web series In Earnest. Now, pause. If you haven't watched In Earnest, you need to. I'm linking to their channel right here. It's a modern vlog adaptation of Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest, and it is one of the most beautiful things to ever come to the internet. But the character Algernon said in a side story that I read on Tumblr that this book was his favorite. And because I tend to agree with his taste in literature, I picked it up. I knew nothing about it. It is beautiful. I just finished it. I can't get out of the world. It was so immersive. It's so beautiful. It's about gentlemen magicians. Specifically, Mr. Norrell is trying to bring magic back to England. It takes place in the 1800s, is written kind of in the style of Jane Austen, but it is also written for a modern audience, and it's very quickly paced. The language is old-fashioned but easy to understand. It kind of has the feel of old Irish stories about fairies that are kind of dark. You know, don't go into this expecting Harry Potter style magic. This is very mystical magic. There's a lot of illusion spells and mirrors. The fairies are not pretty little sissy Disney fairies. These are real, kind of terrifying fairies. It's so beautiful. I need somebody else to read it and love it with me. That's it for books I read in January. Now for my February to be read pile. Starting off, I will be reading for a book with antonyms in the title, Hotel on the Corner of Bitter and Sweet. I know very little about this book, but I'm excited to read it. It's not my usual genre, but I'm intrigued by it. After that, because I have a feeling I'm going to need something lighter, for a trilogy, I am reading The Guardians by William Joyce. You may be familiar with Rise of the Guardians, which is the movie about Jack Frost. It was inspired by this series. This series is the origin stories of Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. I read the first one a while back and really liked it, but then didn't finish the series because I'm easily distracted. But I'm excited to read all three of them. Next, although I don't know what category I will be reading it for, I'm going to be reading The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. I got this a while back, I've never read it, and I'm really excited. I love a good death story, and I love Neil Gaiman, so this should be a good one. That's really all I have planned for February. It's 5 books and it's a short month, so that should keep me covered. Also, I've been reading the poetry of Robert Frost, which I kind of intersperse between other books because I can't just sit and read a book of poetry. But I love Robert Frost and have been really enjoying these, so I look forward to reading some of those during February as well. So that's it for my January wrap-up and February TBR piled. What are you reading in February? Let me know as a comment or a video response. Also, let me know if you've read any of the books I listed and what your thoughts on them are. Specifically if you've read Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, because I need somebody to fan with. That's it for me. Thanks for watching and happy reading.